They were absolutely awesome. I went abroad I'm a senior, so I went abroad senior fall because I really wanted to travel all over the place. So I think every weekend or every other weekend I skipped rowing practice because I was on the rowing team and I was supposed to be rowing every morning. And I would go to like Sweden or Amsterdam or like Dublin for the weekend. Actually, I went to boarding school, so I've been decorating rooms for a long time. So I was fucking excited to have a single in Slav because I didn't have my own room, so I was 13. But my pride and joy is definitely my collage wall, which is like postcards from my family, museums I've been to, pictures from the back of cooking magazines because I love to cook, postcards from like most places I've traveled to, pictures of Oxford, pictures of friends from high school. So I was like putting this up and I realized like, oh, like most of the things that are really important to me are like covered on here, like books, hiking, family, friends, travel, art. Yeah. And I think that one big change was I realized that I'm a huge extrovert. I thought I was an introvert in high school because I was like a huge nerd when I was 14, and like by the time I realized I liked hanging out with people, it was too late. Yeah, I think one of my biggest transitions in college has been like forcing myself to like join in more things and just like show up to more things, and realizing that like half the time like all it takes to like become a member of a group is just like showing up because other people won't. With it, like I was like 12 years old and they were like a 700-page like fantasy novel, like the huge nerd I was. And like, to be clear, my parents weren't like, oh, that's awesome. My parents were like, we're worried about her, like could she please like play soccer or like make friends. And I think like I like in 700 words you get a lot of like terrible mistakes out of your system. So I think that like one of the easiest ways to know you're like passionate about something is that like you would do it whether or not there was like any reward associated with it, and like yeah, being immersed in the thing is its like own payoff. I came into Stanford and I thought I was going to do econ, and like 2.5 years in I was like, fuck this, like the value of like studying the thing I thought that I didn't want my like creative passion to also be my like academic focus. I was like, let's like keep the, I don't know, you know, people who like have to separate all their foods when they eat. Yeah. I was like doing that with like things I enjoyed doing. And then I was just like, nah, like fuck it, like the value of being at Stanford and like studying the thing that I know I love most is just like too high to waste. Yeah. This is what I was talking about with like something happened to me and it took me like several months of like percolating for me to figure out how I wanted to write about it. But it is about my sister like getting a really serious concussion and like taking about a year to recover from it. Concussion. My sister calls from college saying sorry to bother me, except she hit her head and can't talk. But I already hear it. She tries to say stutter and sticks, gulping T's, a watch that can't tick forward. Have you seen a body disobey the brain? That moment, I'm certain she's dying, houses burning in a burrow of her head. I bring her orange juice when I pick her up, and she vomits it on the highway shoulder, my broken clockwork sister. She sleeps or sits in dim-lit rooms for weeks, as neurons patch the tears in their lacework. When at last she starts to joke, to play guitar, it's joy. My gratitude as if for longed-for rain. Return of what we forgot to give thanks for. How often we stop the car in time, or step on ice that doesn't crack. As her consonants snag less and less, I feel catastrophe at my back. How much luck I seem to have. I'm in a class that recently had me reflect on like the biggest things that I do on a weekly basis that either leave me feeling really drained or like really energized, and or just like biggest like time sinks. And one thing I wrote down just like on my list was like, oh, like reading articles, because I'll like have them on my phone as I'm walking somewhere, like pull up my computer and like go on like anything with like BuzzFeed to like the New Yorker. And I was super surprised to realize that like even though I feel like I should be like constantly like taking in like think pieces and news and stuff, like it always leaves me like actually a little like drained and like gross. It's like eating chips for too long. So I think I've realized the value of reading novels is I like they take longer to get into. It's not as like, something about it is not as easy as like opening your computer and like clicking on a news link, but I feel so much more fulfilled like actually having like read a book than I do reading a book's worth of like short articles. So I'm trying to switch into that. Oh, hot takes for the future. I bet we're on a tipping point for much more diverse representation in film and TV. Because this was the year that like Wonder Woman and Black Panther showed that like of course people fucking show up for like a like mostly black cast or like a female superhero. I'm in Greek life and I hope that Greek life is dead if people watch these a decade later. I think that it's a system like with really good people doing the best it can at Stanford. It's much different from how it is in other places, but at the same time I just think that like all the people would be so much better off if there were other social structures within which they could interact that weren't like heteronormative and like obsessed with like drinking and like I don't know, like tended to reinforce like this is how you should be like a man and this is how you should be a girl. So that's a hot take. Sigma Chi just got kicked off campus and I'm not unhappy. Democrats will crush in the 2018 election. I think that Donald Trump will not get a second term, but like God knows who's going to run against him. I hope he doesn't get a Nobel Peace Prize. I'm going into consulting. That's a fixed thing for 3 years. And then I could do business school and like it would be fully paid for if I went back into consulting for 2 years after that. But following on, like I really don't know. I think that I'm one of many people who's begun to think after the Trump election, like, oh, well, if he can be in government, like I can be in government. So I think more and more like if I feel so strongly about like social issues and political issues, like why am I not trying to be one of the people like changing things in practice. I've also like across Stanford realized that I like enjoy leading things not for like the authority of leadership, but because it's like fun to like make calls and when you have a lot of experience to like coach other people. So I could see myself like wanting to like lead a company or like be like somewhere senior, like actually like building like a company from the ground up. I don't know. There are a lot of things I can do. On my mind are actually the 4 months after I graduate, because they're going to be so good. I'm traveling, I'm going on 3 different trips with like 3 different sets of friends that I've made across college. Some of them friends from my freshman dorm, some of them friends from my sorority, and then like 1 trip with my boyfriend. It's a cool thing about college I didn't mention. I'd never dated before Stanford. I met my boyfriend end of sophomore fall, and we've been together like 2.5 years, which is stupid and cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm going on like a ton of different trips. I'm spending all the money I've ever made, and then I'm like going home and sleeping in my parents' basement for a little bit, and then I'm moving to San Francisco. So I'm like going to be sentimental about college ending, but I'm not like, I don't know, I am ready to stop doing like reading responses and like going to section and start like decorating an apartment and living in a city and like having friends all across the US who I can like stay with if I travel there. Like the next chapter looks really exciting to me.